Hello everyone. Back again with film recaps. In this video, I'm going to recap one of the horror sci-fi films from 2024, titled The Substance. Before we get to the storyline, I'd like to wish everyone a happy and great day. Without further ado, let's get straight to the storyline. The movie opens with a scene in which someone injects a strange green fluid into an egg yolk. This causes the yolk to split, and create another identical version of itself. In the next scene, we see a group of men installing a new star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame bearing the name Elizabeth Sparkle. Thousands of eager fans flock to see the star. However, as time passes, its relevance fades, and slowly begins to crack. Following this, we meet our 50-year-old protagonist, Elizabeth Sparkle, who is energetically dancing in her exercise program called Sparkle Your Life. After the show, she passes through a long hallway adorned with posters from past editions of her program, and several crew members warmly wish her a happy birthday. Elizabeth notices that the women's restroom is closed, so she discreetly goes to the men's instead. While she is in a stall, Harvey, the producer of her show, enters, and asks someone on the phone to start finding a hotter and younger host for their show. Harvey mentions that he doesn't care if Elizabeth is an Oscar winner, and says she's nothing more than an old woman now. After the producer leaves, Elizabeth is visibly distressed by what she just heard. As she's driving home later, she comes across a billboard with her image being torn down, which briefly distracts her and causes her to collide with another vehicle. The scene then cuts to the hospital, where we see that Elizabeth is surprisingly unharmed. But she isn't happy and begins to break down in tears out of frustration. Moments later, an attractive male nurse approaches her for an inspection. He examines her spine with interest, and tells her that she's a good candidate. As the nurse hands her jacket, Elizabeth notices a strange birthmark on his hand. Afterward, she discovers something in her jacket. It's a flash drive labeled The Substance, and also a note on a piece of paper that says it changed my life. When Elizabeth returns home, she becomes curious, and plugs the flash drive into her TV. A video then begins with a male voice asking, "Have you ever dreamt about being a younger, and more beautiful version of yourself? One single injection unlocks your DNA. This is the substance." The injection divides the body into two parts, the matrix, which is the original person, and a younger, more attractive version. Both are considered one person, and their bodies must switch between young and old forms every 7 days without exception. However, Elizabeth finds the video ridiculous and throws the flash drive into the trash. In the evening, Elizabeth is still worried about her aging, and is disappointed by the sight of her wrinkled skin. She recalls her former glory days, and wishes she could go back in time. In a moment of desperation, Elizabeth retrieves the flash drive, and dials the number written on it. A man answers on the other end, and Elizabeth nervously says that she would like to place an order. After asking for her address, he gives her another address to write down before abruptly hanging up. The next morning, Elizabeth is upset as she reads a newspaper advertisement announcing a casting call for her replacement on the show. She then checks her mail, and discovers an electronic keycard labeled with the number 503. Elizabeth doesn't waste any time, and heads to the address the man gave her last night. Shortly after, she arrives at an abandoned building with a small, rusty gate. She swipes her keycard across a reader, which prompts the gate to open. Once inside, she enters a white room with several numbered lockers. Using the keycard again, she opens locker 503 and discovers a package. When Elizabeth returns home, she opens the box to find several items. The first is a bag labeled Activator, which contains a syringe filled with a green liquid, and a label on the back that states it's for single use only. The second item is the Stabilizer, which consists of 7 small vials that must be consumed each day. The third bag includes an intravenous needle, and processed food for 7 days. Finally, at the bottom of the box are cards with explicit instructions, stating that the substance should only be activated once. The alternate self must be stabilized daily, and 2 bodies must switch every 7 days without fail. And she must never forget that they are still the same person. Following this, Elizabeth goes to the bathroom naked and looks at herself in the mirror. She then injects herself with the activator, and waits for it to work, but nothing happens. But then, she starts feeling disoriented, and collapses on the ground. Even worse, her body begins twisting wildly. Soon, Elizabeth loses consciousness after a series of convulsions. Then her pupils appear to split, and her back literally tears open, revealing something pushing its way out from inside her. Shockingly, an entire person emerges from the opening in her back. The person stares at the mirror, and we see a younger, more stunning version of Elizabeth, with flawless skin and a perfectly toned figure. After admiring her beauty for a while, the woman notices an unconscious Elizabeth on the floor, her back torn open. She appears to have a clear understanding of what is going on, so she calmly takes the surgical thread from the box, and stitches up the wound on Elizabeth's back. After reading the instructions, she uses a needle to attach the bag of processed food to the unconscious Elizabeth, which will keep her alive for the week. The following day, the young woman takes a shower, and gets dressed, right when she starts to bleed from her nose, which terrifies her. It is at this moment she remembers that she needs to stabilize daily to maintain this body. Therefore, the young woman immediately grabs a stabilizer from her kit, and uses it to extract fluid from Elizabeth's spine, before injecting it into herself. This causes her to feel significantly better. Later, the young woman is practicing yoga in the hallway when she notices Harvey's newspaper ad. She decides to take advantage of the opportunity, and soon arrives at the audition. The judges have auditioned several girls, but none of them fit the part. However, when they see the younger version of Elizabeth, they are overjoyed, because they've never seen such a beautiful woman before. The young woman introduces herself as Sue, and Sue impresses the judges with her performance. Later, she is introduced to Harvey, who is equally thrilled to see her, and hires her on the spot. But during the deal, Sue explains that she won't be available every other week, because she needs to care for her sick mother. Harvey, who is captivated by her beauty, doesn't mind and agrees to work around her schedule. In the following days, Sue begins to gain popularity by participating in various photo shoots and commercials, all the while injecting food into Elizabeth's body. Her face appears everywhere on billboards throughout the city. She also takes over the morning show that Elizabeth previously hosted. However, the 7 days soon pass, and Sue realizes that she must follow the instructions. She approaches the unconscious Elizabeth in the bathroom, and connects their IVs. Following this procedure, Sue quickly passes out, while the real Elizabeth awakens. The latter is perplexed by what has happened, but it doesn't take long for Elizabeth to figure out what's going on. After getting dressed, she returns to work, only for Harvey to return her belongings, and casually inform they've been wanting to celebrate her departure. In the aftermath, an upset Elizabeth returns home and marks a calendar for herself to keep track of when she and Sue will be conscious. After a few days of emptiness, she receives a letter, stating that her refill of food and stabilizers has arrived, and must be picked up at the same location. After 7 days pass, Sue wakes up again, excited to get back to work. She then notices Elizabeth's body in the bathroom, and realizes how exposed it is. To fix this, she tears down a wall in the room, and creates a separate space to hide the unconscious body. Sue then continues to work throughout the week, gaining more success and popularity with each day. On her 7th night, Sue goes to a party and has a lot of fun. She returns home with a man and begins passionately making out with him. But just as they are about to get intimate, Sue suffers a nosebleed because it is far past the time to switch bodies. Terrified, she rushes to the bathroom, and instead grabs one of the empty bottles of the stabilizer. Sue then uses it to extract the fluid from Elizabeth's spine, before injecting herself for the 8th time, which is against the rule. And this reckless decision revitalizes her, and she joyfully returns to the living room to make love with the guy. The next morning, Elizabeth awakens to find her house completely wrecked, littered with empty alcohol bottles. And then, when she examines her hand, she is shocked to discover that one of her fingers has aged significantly more than the rest of her body. Terrified, she contacts the operator of the substance, and tells him that Sue had overused the stabilizer, and asks if there's any way to reverse the aging of her finger. Unfortunately, the man tells her that there is no way to undo what has happened. He suggests that the only thing they can do is maintain the balance to avoid future complications. The next day, Elizabeth goes to the shady building again to get her new refill pack. While returning home, she stops by a coffee shop, where an old man tries to strike up a conversation. Elizabeth soon notices a birthmark on his hand, and recognizes him as the same young nurse who treated her in the hospital. The man then describes how every time he wakes up, he feels terrible, as if he doesn't deserve to live. This conversation makes her increasingly uneasy, and she quickly leaves the cafe. Several days later, it's Sue's turn to regain consciousness, and she heads to work as usual. However, upon her arrival, she is informed that her show has been cancelled, and is called to Harvey's office. The young woman worries that she's going to be fired, but surprisingly, Harvey informs her that their ratings have skyrocketed since her arrival and praises her. He then reveals that, instead of the morning show, she will host a New Year's Eve special, the biggest show in the country. He explains that the event is in 3 months, which gives her plenty of time to prepare, and Sue is thrilled by the opportunity. In the meantime, the young woman also worries that she might lose everything she has accomplished. And so, she starts stealing days from Elizabeth, extracting more and more fluid from her spine. One day, Elizabeth wakes up, and is horrified to see the drastic changes in her body. She has aged dramatically, and her body parts appear horrendous. Terrified, she calls the operator again and pleads for help. The man responds calmly that he cannot change what has happened, but because she is the Matrix, she has the power to stop everything. He asks her if she wants to end it, and go back to being just her on her own. But the condition won't go back to the way it was before, and she can only stop the experience. Hearing this, Elizabeth decides to continue. One night, we see an agitated Elizabeth watching Sue's interview on TV. The host asks Sue how it felt to replace Elizabeth Sparkle, but she explains that she had never seen her show. This is because they are from different generations, and Elizabeth's shows are primarily for old women. Elizabeth becomes enraged by this comment, and starts throwing food at the TV, and around the house. The old woman also angrily covers the windows with the newspaper so that she won't have to see the billboard with Sue's picture. The next morning, when Sue wakes up, she is horrified to discover the chaos left behind by Elizabeth. In her rage, she extracts a large amount of fluid from the old woman's spine, and stores it in a lot of jars without thinking the consequences. The scene then cuts to 3 months later, where Sue is seen with her boyfriend in the apartment. She has survived for 3 months without interruption, while continuously extracting fluid from Elizabeth. On the other hand, the old woman has been unconscious the whole time. It turns out that Sue has a big New Year's Eve show tomorrow. But that night, when she tries to extract more fluid from Elizabeth's spine, she finds out it has all been drained, and this is when she suddenly feels sick. Sue calls the operator and pleads for his help. However, he informs her that she drained it all out. She must wake up Elizabeth, and only then will the fluid regenerate. Sue claims she can't do that because her big show is tomorrow, but the man insists that they have no other option and hangs up. Feeling increasingly ill, she heads to the bathroom, which soon alerts her boyfriend. He gets up and tries to walk to the bathroom, but someone with a disfigured body locks the door from the inside, and it turns out to be Elizabeth, who has finally woken up.
Sue, open the door. Open the door, Sue, come on.
We notice that she now looks completely decayed and hunched over. Even her voice has become grotesque, which frightens the man, and he immediately makes a run for it. Fed up with everything, Elizabeth calls the operator and expresses her desire to end this. The man assures her that they will deliver the necessary kit tomorrow, and the woman seems to miss what she used to be. The next morning, Elizabeth covers herself with some clothes, and heads to the locker to retrieve the package. When she returns home, she drags Sue's body outside, and tries to inject the termination fluid into her chest. However, halfway through the process, she becomes hesitant when she sees the inspiring notes written for Sue's upcoming performance. This reminds her of her own glory days, and she cannot bring herself to complete the termination. Following this, Elizabeth brings in the switch kit and attempts to swap their bodies, so Sue can wake up for her performance tonight. Moments later, the young woman finally awakens, but strangely, Elizabeth also remains conscious. This is the first time they have been awake at the same time, which confuses them. Sue then notices the termination injection and realizes that Elizabeth intended to eliminate her. Fueled by anger, she brutally attacks the old woman, leading to an intense fight between them. Being young and strong, Sue has a clear advantage over Elizabeth, who can hardly move. The old woman rushes to the bathroom to save herself, but Sue catches up to her, and slams her head against the mirror multiple times. After that, she follows Elizabeth outside, and violently kicks her against a table. Sue then continues to kick the older woman with fury until she finally passes away. After the adrenaline rush has passed, Sue finally realizes the horror of what she has done and feels guilty. But she chooses not to dwell on it, and instead concentrates on her show tonight, which is still her top priority. Later on, her crew prepares her for her big presentation. However, she soon realizes that something strange is happening to her body. When she goes to the restroom to check, she is horrified to discover that her teeth are falling off. Despite this, Sue decides to shake it off and heads to the stage. However, when she boards the elevator, she notices that her nails have also fallen off, and then her ears suddenly detach from her body in a disgusting manner. Panicked, Sue rushes back home, and finds the activator fluid that Elizabeth used to create her. She injects herself with what's left of the serum, hoping to create a better version of herself. Moments later, the horrifying process begins again, and Sue experiences the same transformations as Elizabeth. But instead of birthing a stunning woman, a grotesque, misshapen mass of flesh emerges from Sue's spine. The creature, whose name is Monstru Eliza Sue, appears to be a distorted fusion of Sue, Elizabeth, and a random assortment of mismatched body parts. We can also see Elizabeth's face poking out of her back, trapped and gasping for breath. Regardless, Eliza Sue is determined to attend the event at any cost. The disgusting creature puts on Sue's elegant dress, and some accessories to make herself look even more beautiful. After that, she covers her disfigured face with a mask of Elizabeth's face, and walks to the venue. As she arrives, she is welcomed by all the production crews, and she manages to reach the theater without being recognized as the monster she has become. Soon after, the show begins, and Harvey tells his shareholders that Sue is his most beautiful creation and they won't be disappointed. But when it is time for Sue to make her grand entrance, the grotesque creature appears. She is still wearing Elizabeth's mask, which confuses everyone. Eliza Sue then begins to speak, but her mask quickly slips off, revealing her disfigured face. As if things could not get worse, a breast emerges from her eye socket, which horrifies the audience. Following this, the audience erupts into panic screams, causing absolute chaos. The creature tries to reassure the audience by insisting that she is still Sue and Elizabeth. However, they refuse to listen and attack her in fear. A man rushes in and strikes her with a bat, causing her head to explode. To everyone's shock, it regenerates instantly, appearing even more grotesque. The horror doesn't end there, her arm soon shatters, and an endless stream of blood pours out, showering the entire audience. In the final scene, we see Eliza Sue finally leave the theater, and she trips and falls on the street. This causes her entire body to explode, leaving only Elizabeth's face, which was tucked behind her back. Elizabeth uses her last ounce of strength to push herself toward the Hollywood Walk of Fame, where a star is dedicated to her. In her final moments, she reminisces about her glory days, when she was loved and admired by everyone. The movie then comes to an end as she transforms into a bloodstain. Okay guys, thanks for watching. See you again in the next video.